This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And on this week's episode, he's taking a look at the runner-up of our recent poll, the classic 2006 shooter, Black.
That looks like, so you tipped me off to a WA2000. However, that ain't a WA2000. Someone has unbullpupped my bullpup, and I'm furious.
Don't worry, we'll get to the winner of our recent poll in due time, but before then, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of Jonathan, and let us know what other games you'd like to see us cover in the comment section down below. Right, over to Jonathan.
What is that?
In game, it's called the DC3 Elite. It's like a mashup between a Desert Eagle and a Beretta.
It's horrible, truly horrifying. Yeah, I see the Beretta bits. Yeah, I mean, I've got a Desert Eagle right here, but it's almost not worth picking up because it really doesn't look much like it. I guess the Desert Eagle-ness is in the sound, the power, and the frame is quite Desert Eagle-y. And of course, the suppressor turns it from a booming hand cannon into a pew pew sound. Something to do with the way the reflection effect is done on the suppressor makes it look bent as well. Wow, that's a ton of recoil on that revolver.
It's weird looking back at this game because it was like the first one to really like put the guns in the spotlight, so to speak. There was a huge focus on this, all the way down to reload animations, making the background soft focus so you could see the gun and all the details.
Yeah, definitely gun porn. Although I missed out on the game, I remember the marketing for it, and it was very, very gunny. The reload is a bit wacky on this largely fictional Magnum revolver. It's got a sort of a speed loader thing going on. It's like a half a full moon clip and half a speed loader. The player's inserting the thing into the gun. It's staying in the gun until it's empty. And then I think when I don't see that clip come out when we reload either. It's possible that speed loader clip thing is dropping out and I'm just missing it. What's weird though is that there doesn't seem to be much of a gap between the cylinder and the recoil shield to accommodate a great big thick, it's effectively a moon clip. So they've misunderstood how revolvers are reloaded there. Yeah, so sort of a Smith & Wesson / Taurus-ish revolver. What are they calling this, Dave?
So in game, it's just called the Mac 10 Elite.
So I'd like to try and determine whether this thing is meant to be a Mac 10 or a Mac 11, because the scaling of this game is a little hard to get my head around. They are the same basic design. It's a bit of the Father Dougal thing of the Mac 10 is like a Mac 11 closer to you. So let's dig out a couple and have a go. Here is the M10 or Mac 10 with a suppressor attached. I won't bother to take it off. Let's just show you side by side, actually. For those of you who don't know, Mac 10, either 45 ACP or 9 Parabellum, and then its baby brother, the M11 380 ACP. It really is tiny. Honestly, I think it's halfway between the two. Just finger in the air guess. So I think they sort of idealized an Ingram style submachine gun. It certainly looks wider to me than the M11. How is it stopping power wise?
I mean, it's definitely lacking compared to the DC3 Elite, but funnily enough, because it leans so heavily into the action movie tropes that all the magazines are massive. You're sending so many rounds downrange anyway. It's one pull of the trigger, you're probably hitting a guy like 6 or 7 times.
So the rate of fire is not fast enough for an M11, which runs like MG42 speed because it's a small light bolt and there's no locking going on, and that's in 380 ACP, 9mm short. So again, rate of fire is between those two, really. So it's a sort of fictionalized Ingram, I would say. This is the early days of realism in firearms in games, so we need to give them a pass to some extent. I think in 2006 I would have enjoyed that MP5, but as it is, that front sight post is giving me a twitch. Let's just show you. So joins this protective hoop here joins almost directly onto the bottom part of the sight assembly. It doesn't stick up on that weird post. That's oddly off-putting. Again, beautifully done for 2006. We've even got the details of the pressing of the stamped body here, where the sight mount is attached here and here. A lot of detail for this time period. The cocking handle is reciprocating, which it absolutely shouldn't do. It's not connected to the bolt carrier. It stays put. It stays where it is, bolt moves. We don't have the classic tri-lug. We have just a plain barrel, and yet we attach a suppressor somehow. There's no threading, there's no tri-lug, so that's impossible. Good rate of fire, good handling. Now, at one point, we get a good view of the lower receiver, and it is something we don't have. This is an HK94 with the barrel cut down from 16 inches with a full auto trigger group. This is a movie gun. Quite funny. This is so if you watch Die Hard, Predator, basically any action movie of the 80s, 90s filmed in America, it was very difficult to get hold of real HK MP5s. And so they would buy the civilian version, cut the barrel off, which is why you haven't got the lugs, and convert them to full auto. The lower receiver on the real MP5 is plastic, famously. The one in the game has the fire selector markings of the modern polymer MP5 plastic polymer lower. But what it actually is the sheet metal lower receiver with the polymer pistol grip of the HK94 with the later markings applied to it. So this is really interesting. This is a video game copy of an action movie gun passed off as an MP5. Oh, and no paddle magazine release, which is also a feature of the HK94. For whatever reason, when those were created, they only had the push button. So that's a really cool bit of MP5 history there, even if it's a little bit janky. Oh dear, left-handed AK. Temporarily forgotten about the era of left-handed guns. It's an odd one, because plenty of guns in this game don't do this, but the AK does. It's also got a really weird pseudo-rail bridge thingy on top of the dust cover. This would be a really decent AK, especially compared to something like the GoldenEye AK, if it wasn't for that really weird dust cover and another random bit of pseudo rail stuck to the side of the front trunnion. Is that what that is? The cocking handle attached to the bolt carrier is minuscule. We have the big milled slot of an AK-47 rather than an AKM. Sound effect unsuppressed is pretty good. Rate of fire's pretty good. Weird star muzzle flash that you would not get from an AK. That classic Hollywood star-shaped flash. The only way you get those plumes of flame is if there are slots for them to be generated from. Oh, riding that charging handle. That's not how you operate a firearm. God, I remember the G36 from the launch of the game thinking, oh, that's very modern and cool. I'd love to play that. Oh God, so much to, I hate this word, but unpack. So we have a reload going on there. But, well, first of all, the charging handle is in the wrong place and it's the wrong type. Let me just prove that. Here's a real D36. See, I haven't swapped out the magwell for the conventional one. This is the AR-15 style one, but regardless, this is what it should look like. So, famously, even at this point, the charging handle for the G36 lives under the sight rail or the carrying handle, depending on the model, and you can access it from either side. And the way you should operate any firearm is to pull back and let go. Cocking handle in the game version is running down here and has a fixed handle on it. So that's completely wrong. We then see it locks open on the empty magazine. We get a fresh magazine on the gun, at which point the bolt puts itself forward and then our man cocks it again. Now there is no auto bolt forward on a G36, but if there was, that would have chambered around and then cocking it again would eject a live round. So that's all kinds of messed up. I've got a random shot of this thing from the side and it has a bizarre looking MP5K PDW looking buttstock on it, not the G36 B&T style side folder. But, you know, the silhouette is still recognizably G36C. I think the magazine is too short front to back. The magazine well looks right, but the mag doesn't. Bore grip looks like it's just ribbed rather than Picatinny, which I think is what they were going for. Yeah, I should stress the overall impression of this is very much G36C. It's not like it's terrible. It's just a function of the age of the game. Oh. That looks like... So you tipped me off to a WA2000. However, that ain't a WA2000, even though it says it is. Someone has unbullpupped my bullpup, and I'm furious. The weird thing is, I don't think that's the first unbullpupped WA2000 we've seen, is it?
No, I think another game has sort of done a similar thing with the WA2000. What it is escapes me.
This thing also has rip-out magazine syndrome, but we still get that sometimes today.
It's also been turned into a bolt action.
Yes, it has. Oh, God. So the two selling points of the WA2000, bullpup, nice and compact, and semi-automatic for rapid, accurate follow-up shots. Nah, don't get either of those things with this. Oh, some sort of standalone M203. That's fairly early for something like that. They were around then, of course, but that's a crazy looking Picatinny rail on the top there this time. I don't think I've seen any of the Picatinny rails actually in use, but this one has, it's like a sort of slack-jawed yokel version of Picatinny where there are huge gaps between the stops, and the stops are also different widths. The so-called 40mm grenades look like the old Mad Bull Airsoft BB firing shot grenade things with that ring of holes. That's really weird. Maybe they only had an airsoft grenade for reference. It's a step up from Doom using toys.
I wonder if that's because it was made by Criterion, who are based in the UK. That's like what they had for physical 3D reference.
Quite possibly. There have been precious few inert 40mm grenades around, I think, at that time. It's a reasonable looking Glock. Yeah, it's a really good effort actually for a Glock from that time. But the slide, I think it has the old issue of locking open on its own after you finish firing. Yeah, weird. So pull the slide back, slide stays back and then goes forward somehow. It's very odd. Perhaps the result of only having airsoft guns to work from, because it is quite hard to get your head around how real rounds would feed through a gun when you only have a loading nozzle and a loading tower, BB loading tower thing on the mag. But having said that, the functionality of airsoft is pretty good. You know, it locks open when you finished firing, and you see how the slide release works, or just pull the slide back. There's no, yeah, that doesn't make sense. You could have just had them pull the slide to send the slide home after a reload. Oh, good lord. So that's recognizably a mini Uzi, but it has two cocking handles.
And the 90-round magazine.
Well, I'm overlooking that at this point. So it has a non-reciprocating, non-functional cocking handle on the top where it should be, but it's blocked by a load more pointless Picatinny rail. And then it has a fictional left side charging handle and bolts, like a lot of the guns in this game have actually, but it's similar to the one on the G36C in the game. Really quite distracting and completely pointless too, because if there's no way to fit a sight to this thing, you don't need that rail on top. Could have just had a proper cocking handle on the top. Even using airsoft as a reference, there are some odd choices when it comes to gun design.
I do think a lot of those choices come down to the gun porn-esque nature of the game, of wanting something visually interesting to look at.
I guess, but you could still... Well, yeah, no. I suppose that's fair, because the top cocking handle doesn't reciprocate. We've got an animated sling swivel on the back there. That might have been a first. And thankfully, it's before charms were invented, so there's nothing hanging off it. The magazine, as on the Ingram, the magazine kicks out like it's somehow sprung. In reality, with both guns, you have to rip it out of the gun and then grab a new one. that? Why is there an old school telephone flex cable draped over this M4? Oh, I see. It's the no. I guess vintage flashlights might. Don't remember seeing that. It seems a bit like a massive snag hazard. There's a really weird shelf on the left side of the upper receiver on this thing. Again, more unnecessary detail. Carry handle looks good. The rear sight within it is really well represented. Shame you can't use it. And there's a very bizarre upper rail permanently part of the carry handle and then running forward, seemingly attached to the front sight block. That's weird. Odd, pointless tweak of the rear sight there on this RPG. And the support hand grip is in the wrong place. Should be at the rear, not the front. Diameters of the tube are off as well. A bit too thick in the rear, shall we say. But there's some level of interaction with the gun, which is nice. Early days for what we now see with all the different animations that we get, including press checks. There's no attempt to align those front and rear sights. In fact, they both look like rear sights. You've got two notches when what you need is a post and a notch. So there's a misunderstanding there of how sights work, but it's definitely one of the cooler RPGs that you will have had your hands on in 2006. Explosive effect is maybe a bit much for a standard high explosive anti-tank PG7 tight round. There's a big flash, not really a big fireball with that thing. It's an anti-tank weapon. It's designed to pierce armor, so it's a little underwhelming if you see one explode on something. You don't get a big Hollywood fireball, put it that way. You definitely don't want to be anywhere near it though. Okay guys, you asked for it, we delivered. Those were the Guns of Black, which I very much regret not playing at the time because I absolutely could have done, but somehow it passed me by. I might even go back and play it with my retro head-on later. If you don't mind checking out the Royal Armouries YouTube channel or our website socials or our app, well, not our app, the app that we are now part of called History of Weapons and War, give that a look as well. Anything you can do to support us here at the Royal Armouries is appreciated. And we'll see you again next week.